Dark Deity 3 is officially on the way, and while we don't have a release date just yet, we do have a ton of details we can glean from this trailer for both the story and gameplay mechanics, and we even got a letter from the developers that goes into further detail about the mechanics, so we have a lot to discuss today. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel. Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my ongoing coverage of everything going on in the turn-based strategy RPG scene, or turn-based tactics scene if you prefer, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Also, please do pay attention and check out my Patreon. I have a big update coming for this. It's not something that we normally advertise here on the channel, but at time of recording, tomorrow, the 8th of June, I have a major update and new content dropping on the Patreon. I'll have a video out about it at the time that it all goes live tomorrow, but if you are at all interested in what I do, if you want to be able to help directly support the channel, or at least are just curious, make sure that you check it out. There will be a link in the description. Keep an eye here for what the full discussion of what these changes are going to be, and I promise I'm doing my best to make it pretty substantial for folks who want to check it out. That said, though, we're not here to talk about me. We are here to talk about Dark Deity 3, which was just announced by IGN via its announced trailer. And boy howdy, for a trailer that's a little over a minute long, there's a lot of things to discuss here. For those of you who are unaware, Dark Deity 2 is still, to this day, my personal game of the year of 2025. I absolutely adore it. I love the franchise as a whole, and so of course, you can imagine I'm a little bit excited about this one. If there's any particular aspects of this discussion that you are the most interested in, I will have timestamps in the description and in the time bar for the video so you can jump around to the position that you want to be in, but we're going to start off by discussing what we know about the story, get into the graphics, and then of course, the mechanical details. As far as the story is concerned, details are light thus far, but we do know that DD3 follows directly on from DD2. Unlike the transition from Dark Deity 1 to Dark Deity 2, you will definitely want to play the second one if possible before getting into 3, as a lot of the plot points, threads, characters, etc. that are going to be relevant to 3 started in 2. That said, that does mean that a lot of ongoing plot threads are going to be getting paid off here, I would imagine at the very least, with the move from 2 to 3 being directly equated to Path of Radiance to Radiant Dawn. If my Fire Emblem fans out there are aware of that transition, you know just how much connection there was between the two games. And in DD3, we're going to be following 2 separate threads. Gwen Sildarin and her army as she takes the fight to enemy armies, monsters, newly arisen death cult, you know, casually, no big deal, and her brother Arthur's force of scholars and mages who are investigating the source of all of the demons and magical disruption that are behind that death cult and which started cropping up about halfway through the game in DD2. Of course, since this is such a direct sequel, there's going to be a lot of characters, many of them returning, some new, and some classic player characters from DD1 even, like Irving and his wife Marin, who will be making their grand return here. Of course, we also do have notable characters like Gwen, Arthur, and Benji, all returning from Dark Deity 2, and a slew of new characters that join the roster as well, making up for a total playable cast of 28. Pretty damn good for a game of this size, and very nice to see in a growing SRPG genre that has kind of moved away from giant armies because permadeath isn't as much of a thing anymore. We're going to talk about that aspect for Dark Deity 3 later in the video. Well, that's pretty much all we know right now for the overall story setup for DD3. We do know 2 other details that are pretty interesting. First of all, Death itself is apparently the primary antagonist. We don't know quite why or how that's even going to really work, of course. I'm not entirely sure, but anything is possible in a world of swords and sorcery. And from a more meta standpoint, major story beats are going to have dedicated hand-drawn manga panels to accentuate those events and show off exactly what is happening. We're not just going to be relegated to specific scene CGs anymore. We're not at like full animated cutscene level because again, this is still an indie title, but I do think this is a really nice way to lend a little bit more emotion and show a little bit more of the world and the setting and characters' reactions to major events that are going on. So I'm curious to see exactly what these all are going to look like. Speaking of looking though, as far as the graphics are concerned, visually, the game's maintaining that same high-quality sprite work and the animations that the series is pretty much now known for, with some further developing of the user interface to accommodate new mechanics like the morale system, which, Oh, we're going to talk about that, but you're going to have to wait till near the tail end of the video, because it sounds pretty cool. That said, though, all the new animations and class designs that we've seen in this trailer so far look sick, and I'm a particular fan of some of these more either demonic or just magical, I'm not entirely sure. Whatever these characters are, I'll have them on screen here, that we've been seeing now, presumably due to Arthur's investigations and that whole side of the story. More importantly, however, we have the return of the HP vials from Dark Deity 1. This is something I'm so excited about. I'm so happy to see that these are back. Really, to me, these vials and the fact that the animation for their destruction changes depending on the damage type that's used against that unit is a very, very cool visual flair that was really distinct in DD1 and I think was sorely missing in DD2. So seeing them back for the third game makes me really kind of unreasonably happy. I know it's a very minor detail, but come on, man. How cool is it to see, like, the glass melting away when you kill a unit with a fire attack, as an example? It's peak stuff. That said, though, the bulk of what we need to talk about here is mechanics, and this is actually going to be split into two different sections. Mechanical details that we've seen from the trailer, and then more details that we've learned from the article with the devs, which we'll hit at the end. First of all, for the trailer, we have a lot of returning mechanics from both DD1 and DD2 to discuss here. First off, you can notice how there's these little icons next to weapon names and unit sprites here. I have an inkling that this is another hinted return of a mechanic from DD1 where you had different weapon classes that had their own style, I guess you could say, for each weapon that was focused on different stat spreads. We had strength, accuracy, crit, and balance. I kind of did a little bit of everything. It was generally lower weight. And based on what we can see from these icons, I think that that's going to be coming back in some way. Pair that up with what we can see here on this character sheet, with Marin having slots for two different weapons, and I feel we're going to be seeing a return to a little bit more of a focus on weapons and their different utilities in combat, very Fire Emblem style, which I'm pleased by. You know, what is an old broom going to be able to do? I don't know. But I'm excited to find out, and it'll be nice to have each character having their weapons be more than just like a stat stick for them, you know? So we'll have to see. We can also see a number of new classes, returning classes from DD1, Astral Seeker, my beloved. And it's hard to say exactly what they're going to be doing without seeing more character sheets, but it is worth noting that we've seen a few characters with spears, including our bestest boy Benji here. We, again, haven't seen spears since DD1, and I'm eager to see if they have an expanded role here, like different weapon skills and maybe range or like different balance of stats, who knows. All told, according to the trailer, there's going to be a total of 74 different classes with a grand total of 170 abilities spread between them that DD3 is going to be bringing to the table, which to me is absolutely insane, and I imagine will keep replays very fresh. Based on this screen here with Marin, we can see that mana is making a return as your resource for ability casting, and amongst other character details, we can see two very interesting facets. The first is Marin's passive, which states, abilities that heal are immune from mana decay, quote unquote. What is mana decay? I have no idea, but I would assume it's something that increases subsequent costs for uses of the same ability in a row, or maybe like a status effect like bleed or poison that enemies can apply. Hands up, full truth, I have absolutely no idea, but I do know that I'm scared. We're going to have to see exactly how much of an impact this has. But anyway, the second detail we can see is that there are slots for up to 3 passive and 5 active abilities per character, with Marin having what is presumably her personal skill here, Lingering Light, as well as Cleanse and Restore. I would assume that those last two are her abilities from her base priest class, with the other 2 slots being filled once she promotes, same as DD2. I am very much pleased to see that the system is still in place. It's part of what made character growth in Dark Deity 2 so fun. It's an evolution of the system in DD1. Though if there are other changes to the way you acquire and keep skills, we're going to have to wait and see until we actually see promotion in action, like into whatever abilities and passives you had when you promoted to a tier 3 class. You would just keep those, and that was that. However, that said, it's not just our army that has new toys. It seems enemies in DD3 are going to have access to, at the very least, the classes from Dark Deity 2, as seen at multiple points in this trailer, and could very well be getting ones from Dark Deity 1 and 3 as well. Add to that they also have these new distinct weapons, a la, again, Fire Emblem, and I imagine basic troops are going to be a lot more threatening this time around. As far as other gear, we have also seen that rings are making a return once more, although there won't be crafting anymore, more on that in the dev article section. They do look to still be fulfilling their role as central aspects of build crafting though, with each character having 2 slots for them with a wide range of effects on display already. There's apparently going to be 70 rings in total, some new and some returning, with effects like ignoring weapon weight, restoring health on kill, gaining defense when enemies are nearby, boosting ability damage, etc., etc. For our battle maps, we haven't seen a ton of information yet, but we can confirm that battles are still going to be large and dense, with both terrain and enemies in heavy supply. We still have chests, terrain bonuses, various objectives, such as like defeat a boss or subdue a character, who here actually you can see is named Khaleesi, something like that. This will be important in a second. Free all the prisoners, your standard strategy tactics RPG fare. Finally, as far as mechanics details from the trailer is concerned, eagle-eyed viewers may have, again, noticed that one playable character we see in action at the end is named Khaleesi, whatever. We just mentioned them as a hostile objective though. So, they're either a story recruit, or maybe we have mid-battle recruitment a la Fire Emblem, red units that we can turn to our side perhaps? I don't know, who can really say until we see more, but I know I, for one, would love to have that as a thing again, because it's really something that a lot of games have moved away from in recent years, and I think that's very disappointing. They're always fun bonus objectives, to be able to recruit a new character to your side, right? Like, who doesn't want to do that? Now, that's the trailer, but we do have this whole Dev Insight article that we need to discuss as well, because there's a lot of interesting details in there, and some insight into the overall psychology of some of the changes coming to DD3. As always, I'm going to just pull the highlights from this article to discuss here. If you want to read it in full, and I would absolutely recommend that you both do that and watch the trailer, I'll have them both linked in the description. Go check them out for yourself. First off, though, we mentioned that new morale system early in the video, and here's what we know about it. Essentially, Chip wanted there to be a sense of pressure on each map, as there should be in a tactics game, right? Without there necessarily, though, having to be permadeath. Permadeath has never been a core aspect of the series, and while I personally enjoy it immensely as a system in this type of game, it can be fine if it's not there, so long as that absence is being filled by some other mechanic or pressure to replace it. And indeed, Chip says it best here himself. Quote, "Permadeath isn't interesting strictly because of the consequence itself. It is interesting because how it changes your approach to the map from moment to moment and team comp to team comp," unquote. This led to morale, an army-spanning resource that impacts your unit's ability to perform in combat, presumably in various ways. The example given here is that to be able to double attack, you will need your morale to be above 50. Any lower than that, and you're going to be stuck with single attacks, putting a little bit more of an emphasis on tanky frontliners and other slower units that are otherwise more durable to keep you alive until you can rally and raise your morale again and start tossing out double attacks like it's Fire Emblem. If your morale is at 0 at the end of a turn, though, that's an instant loss. There's your big punishment, your consequence mechanic fully kicking in. Now, how difficult is it going to be to have that occur? How hard is it going to be to recover from it? We don't know, but we do know that there will be a lot of different events that can influence morale. Obvious things like losing units. Obviously, yeah, negatively impacts your morale. People aren't going to like it if their buddies are dying around them. However, you can also regain morale by completing certain mission objectives. The example here being given as death cultists are draining your morale, but each time you defeat one, you get a big chunk back, right? That type of thing. Additionally, you'll also be able to actually promote units to captains and commanders, squad leaders, that type of thing, who will then get abilities to help manage morale as well, but who the loss of will obviously also devastate morale in a turn. I imagine this is really going to lead to a lot of very interesting, dynamic, more unique map types and objectives, and as such, I think it's the feature I'm probably the most excited for mechanically from the reveal. How annoying is it going to be to manage? How varied are these objectives going to be? We'll have to see, but at this point, I have a lot of faith in the team at Sword and Axe to make it a really integral and fun to engage with mechanic, which is going to be vitally important. We also get a little bit more information about classes here, and I do think that this is a big one. Each character in your playable roster will, for the first time ever, have their own unique pool of classes that they can swap between and promote through. So we're not going to be running into situations anymore where there's like one best adept or warrior or whatever, like in the past games. You're not going to have a character that is in a class type and as such has all the same promotion and class change options as every other character in that type. Again, we have an example that's given here where we have Benji, who's typically a very heavy armor, high HP, high defense, decent damage frontline tank who folds to magic, actually having a unique path of being able to go through Crusader into Berserker, turning him into more of an anti-mage bruiser. That's just one path that you'll be able to take, and with 28 playable characters and 70 classes total, I can obviously see a lot of flexibility for what each character could potentially do and how they could slot into your army. And I bet it's going to make everyone feel really unique, even more so than they have in the past. In this same section, it is also again mentioned that a lot of the new classes are actually reworked ones from DD1, which I love because I think there was some really cool class design in that game. And it's confirmed that we will finally have unique hero, quote-unquote, classes for important characters like your Gwyn's and your Arthurs and stuff like that, your Fire Emblem Lords, that type of thing. That's something that I really feel the series has always been kind of missing, and I'm really eager to find out what that means for some of our favorites and how they're going to play compared to other similar types of characters, what options it'll give them. The final section of this Dev Insight article that we're going to be covering is the section on progression, because it involves the removing of crafting and more of the direct loot systems that are going to be introduced. So, crafting has been removed to make way for a more traditional loot system. As he says, Chip kind of feels that you would hit a point in the past games where you got your characters and your builds locked in, and as a result, future rings or loot or weapons that you would find or items that you would craft to make other stuff really didn't feel like they mattered anymore, because, you know, you were all locked in. You had your stuff set up. I don't need some cool new knife. All my knife users are already set up with some crazy thing that makes their build pop, right? Like, I'm not going to change now. Now, to accommodate that, loot is more limited, but also more powerful and intentionally scattered through the game, again, a la a more classic Fire Emblem, with the intent of making getting chests and completing bonus objectives a more exciting prospect. And I definitely see the vision here, right? You can find some wicked new bow that you're going to be able to put on an archer that has a good stat spread and a cool unique ability or something. That's going to be way more interesting and fun in the moment than opening a chest and getting, like, another ruby that I can use to craft a ring after the map is over. Like, it's just, I don't need that after a certain point. And yeah, maybe a new weapon won't be useful for you, but it very well could be what sets up or completes a build for a character that you kind of had in mind already. So, we'll have to see just what the loot cadence actually is in Dark Deity 3 before we can say with any sort of conviction how it feels in practice, but I like the idea and I think it's going to function pretty well from past design decisions. And that's all the most relevant info that I've been able to find between this announced trailer and this Dev Insight article. Personally, I love when we get proper sequel development between two different tactics and strategy games. It's not something that I've seen that often outside of things like Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, but I think it was done extremely well there in the Fire Emblem franchise, and I think it's going to be handled very well here as well. I'm very excited to see where some of these characters go, who returns from past games, how we continue to see the development of mechanics. I'm super hyped, man. Like I said, Dark Deity 2 was absolutely my personal game of the year in 2025, and whenever it is that Dark Deity 3 comes out, I imagine it's probably going to be in hot contention for my favorite game of that year as well. That said, though, I would be very curious to hear what your guys' impressions are of both this video and the announcement of Dark Deity 3. Are you hype? Are you excited? Are there changes that you're looking forward to, or maybe that you're a little bit more worried about? Let me know all of that in the comments down below. I love talking about these games with you guys, and you all seem to enjoy it as well, so it's a win-win for everybody. For now, though, I think I'm going to wrap this one up here. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope that you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, y'all. And remember, be good to each other, everybody. Bye now.